Okay, welcome. Today I would like to offer a little reflection about boarding school and food, and just a little bit about my own experience of what food was like, maybe some of the issues around that, and also just wanted to read a couple of words from Joy's book about what she feels about food. So, enjoy. So, kind of busy day. I didn't sleep great last night, so if I look a little tired, it's because I am. But just seeing the spring flowers. It's been snowing the last few days here. But yeah, that sense of life returning. So yeah, kind of just come up for me about food. I was just reading Joy's book, and I'm like, just the insights. So I think for me, I see that I struggled with food before going to boarding school. So for those who don't know, I went to boarding school aged 11, just turned 11. And I was very fussy at home, and I kind of got away with, eating more or less not what I wanted, but there was only a few things I would really eat. So arriving at school, food, it was an issue at the beginning. So I had a lot of tuck. For those of you who haven't been to boarding school, tuck is, you have this food locker, or maybe it's a little box where you've got food, and it might be crisps or chocolates or biscuits or breakaways or clubs, and that would supplement me when I wouldn't always get food in the dining room. So the way our school worked was we had tables. I think it was 14 people on a table, and then the food would arrive at the top end where the prefects were. So you had 4 years in the junior houses. So the prefects were, the fourth year. They would take, and then they'd pass on from third year. Once third year had finished, at second year, and down to the first year. So if there was something really lovely, like chips, then if you were on the first year, the chances were there would be very little left. Especially if you had someone as a prefect, one of the older end, who had a huge appetite, they might take a lot of it. But often the food wasn't that good. And I kind of looking through my diary, I wrote a diary as a 11-year-old, and often it was like just saying, wow, yeah, I didn't really enjoy the food, it was disgusting today, and things I used to really love, like custard, just seemed to be disgusting. And yet reflecting, cooking a meal to arrive at the table at a certain time for 800 people, that's pretty impressive on one level. But the food was generally pretty disgusting. And I was just reading in here, this was kind of report from one of Joy's clients, just saying the meat they were given was condemned as unfit for human consumption, and it was always full of veins and tubes. And yeah, that was, I'm laughing now, but I didn't feel like that at the time. I remember as a 17-year-old having these big sausages and having to pick gristle out and throw it on the floor, and mentioning this to my uncle, who was working in catering in Oxford, and he said, "Oh yeah, they're the 5%." He says that's what's left is scraped off the bottom of the abattoir floor, and then that's made into sausages. So all the gristle and stuff like that. So that was the food, and especially the meat. So the issues, really, to say at the beginning, I see that a lot of it was hunger. The first year I was hungry. I used to have stomach aches a lot because I was just starving. And I remember going to matron a few times, just complaining of stomach aches. She'd give me biscuits. That was how she would help. But there was nothing ever really done about it. And I just want to read a little bit from here. This is page 70. So, in the analysis of boarding school syndrome, the relationship of the ex-boarder to food is usually significant. The younger a child is exposed to boarding school, the more likely it is disruption to their emotional development and so their appetites. Latency is the developmental time from about 5 to 6 years of age and before puberty. In the normal course of latency, the child learns to accept certain foods and to reject others. The child who is forced to eat food that he or she finds nauseating will dread meal times. In institution, there is little subtlety, and so this part of individuation is often overridden by inflexible rules. This is compounded when children are always hungry and obliged to compete at meal times, as is often the case in boarding schools. So it's just that sense of, we're being forced to eat foods, and I learned to eat what was given because it was like otherwise I would be really hungry, so I kind of gave up what I liked and what I didn't like and just ended up eating this food. So I also hear that, especially with the women I've worked with or I've spoken with who've been to boarding school, there's often a food issue there, whether that's bulimia, anorexia, some kind of eating issue, and I feel it's partly because of that what she's saying. The child who is forced to eat food that he or she finds nauseating will dread meal times. It's like, we don't feel relaxed because, again, she talks about it here in the book. I mean, our dining room, it's 800 people in one room, and it was noisy. Really noisy. It wasn't a relaxed place. I mean, and then the amount of time we had for eating. So I think this was 2 meals, certainly lunchtime. It was, it began with a boom, a gavel. Then everyone went silent. We had grace, and then a boom, another gavel. It might have been twice, and then everyone could start eating. And we had, I believe it was 20 minutes or maybe possibly 25, but probably 20 minutes to eat 2 meals, main course and dessert in that time. And if you imagine you've got to pass the food down the line, people taking time, so people at the top of the end, they get a lot more time, but the first few years you get very little time to eat. And it was frowned upon once the gavel went again at the end, to mean the end of meal, it was kind of frowned upon that you stayed. You were kind of insulted or put down, so it was kind of, there was something wrong with you. You couldn't eat really, really quickly. And studying things like nutrition nowadays, I think it's called David Mark, or something like that. And he was saying that often people will come to him, and he says all he gets them to do is just to slow down their eating. If they won't do anything else, he says, just eat slowly. The Taoists, they talk about chewing your food. I think it might be 36 times each mouthful. And you look on a Western medicine point of view, that releases the saliva, which helps our digestion. So there's not just the physical side of the food, but there's also the emotional side of it. And I have to say, post boarding school, my eating, I've sometimes struggled with my stomach. So it's interesting that there's still more work for me to do there around that. So just some reflections. It might be a bit of a ramble today, so I apologise. I've got a very busy day today, so it's like, okay, what's the subject? And I like to do my video once a week. Yeah. So that's basically what I'd like to share around this. So, what can we start to do if we did feel, we struggle with food nowadays? For me, so it's starting to slow down our eating. And one thing I do with my wife is like doing a little blessing. So like just offering gratitude for all the food. So it's like slowing myself down, and then rather than it being a rushed affair, just slowing down and just saying thank you for the food, thank you for the animals, the plants, and for the sun, Mother Earth. Just really connecting, saying a little grace, but not in the way of how we had it at school, but more from a connection. This is how it feels, and therefore we feel more relaxed. Instead of being in cortisol, we release the oxytocin, we're more relaxed, and therefore our digestion, the fight or flight, instead of all of our, us being in fear, the body relaxes, and therefore that helps with digestion. So those are just some things that I found helpful. And on that note, I'm going to go and have some food. Please do offer any reflections, and I talk about this a bit more in my book. And final bit is I had a message from Christine Jack, who's an author about boarding school, who I messaged a few months ago, who's interested in doing an interview. So hopefully I'll have her on my podcast next week. And then the end of this month, I was meant to be interviewing him this week, about eldership, about how we grow up really. I'm talking to an elder from the Mankind Project, which is a charity, at the end of this month for my podcast. So I've got a few really interesting people coming up soon. So watch this space. So many blessings to you, and please do share your stories about food below. I'm sure those who haven't been to boarding school, it would be, it's fascinating to actually see, God, did you really have to eat that? Was it really like that? So please do share. Okay, many blessings to you. Have an amazing week, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.